Look at that, it's finally here. This is the brand new Garmin Venu X1, and if you follow my channel, you saw yesterday I posted a video about the announcement of this watch, but I didn't have it yet. Funny enough, it showed up, and in this video today, I want to talk about what I've learned about it so far, my first run with it, and my experience after a day of using it. I know it's a short amount of time, but there's a lot to talk about here. So when this watch was announced, I had a lot of questions after reading the spec sheet, and I think after using this watch for just a day now, I've actually answered several of those questions. So in this video today, I want to share my initial thoughts about the new Venu X1, take a look at some preliminary GPS and heart rate data from a run I've done already, answer several questions that you might have about this watch, and to be honest, I like it a lot more than I thought I would. First of all, let's dive through some quick facts about the new Venu X1 if you haven't already read the spec sheet. The price on this watch comes in at a whopping $799. And in my video yesterday, I had a lot of criticism about that price, but I sort of have a hot take about this now, and we'll talk about that more at the end of this video. The Venu X1 is a unique watch because it's got this square form factor that Garmin has done before a couple of times, but I think this is the first time that this is like a really premium square form factor watch. Of course, it's got this giant 2-inch AMOLED display that is touch enabled. It's got a titanium backplate, as you can see here. It's got two metal buttons on the side here. The Venu X1 comes in at 46 millimeters tall by 41 millimeters wide, and it weighs just 40 grams with the included Comfort Fit band. But the really impressive spec about this watch is the thickness. Coming in at just 7.9 millimeters, it makes other watches like this Garmin Forerunner 970 look chunky in comparison, and the Forerunner 970 on the top here is not a chunky watch, so that just gives you an idea on just how thin this watch really is. And flipping the watch over here, you can see that inside of that titanium backplate, we do have Garmin's Gen 5 heart rate sensor, which does include skin temperature detection, improved accuracy over the Gen 4 sensor, but unlike other watches like the Forerunner 970 here, it does not get built-in ECG or electrocardiogram. Inside the watch, we do have over 100 activity profiles to choose from here. Everything from your standard running, hiking, cycling, whatever, all the way to triathlon in multi-sport mode and everything in between. There's a lot of activities to do on this watch. And on top of that, of course, you have all of the health and wellness data you can imagine from an $800 Garmin. Everything from body battery, sleep metrics, training load, training status, recovery advisor, etc. is all here on the Venu X1 as well. The X1 also comes with this handy built-in flashlight, which we'll talk more about in a minute, and under the hood we do have a full array of sensors, including a barometric altimeter, a compass, accelerometer, and of course GPS and heart rate. More on that in a minute. In terms of connectivity, the Venu X1 also does support external heart rate sensors. If we dive into the connectivity here, go to sensors and accessories, this will support ANT+ and Bluetooth external sensors. And of course, this watch does include 32 gigabytes of internal storage for music and downloading maps. And that's right, this watch also does support full offline mapping and navigation, just like a high-end Garmin watch like the Forerunner 970 or the Fenix 8 here. It's basically the exact same system here in the Venu X1 as well, which is really good because Garmin's probably one of the best when it comes to mapping. And on top of all of that, the Venu X1 also does support golf. For you golfers out there, you can download your courses and you can go golfing with it. It will tell you all the details about the course. I don't really do that, but if you do, it's on this watch as well. In the Venu X1, even though it is a Venu series, gets a few extra features like running dynamics, including running power from the wrist with no external sensors required, and it does have pack weight, which was a new feature announced on the Forerunner 970 here. That's also available here on the Venu X1 as well. Okay, now that we've talked about all the things that the Venu X1 does have, let's talk about a few things that it's missing. First of all are the advanced running dynamics that were announced with the Forerunner 970 here. So as you can see on the Forerunner 970, I have the new running tolerance widget. And if I go back and scroll down, we also get the new running economy widget here. These are two features that are exclusive to the Forerunner 970 and have not trickled down to any other watch yet, including the brand new Venu X1. I actually don't think they will in the future. And if we dive into the GPS settings on both of these watches, you'll see another thing missing, and that is multiband GNSS. On the Forerunner 970 and the Garmin Fenix 8 here, we get multi-band GNSS. On the new Venu X1 here, it is completely lacking multi-band positioning. You do have multi-GNSS or all systems, which is still very good, and we'll talk more on that in a minute, but no multi-band. Another thing missing from the GPS settings over on the Venu X1 is that it doesn't have Sat IQ or Auto Select. So on the Forerunner 970, the Garmin Fenix 8, and a few other Garmin watches, they have something called Sat IQ or Auto Select that'll determine the best satellite system to use for a given situation to conserve battery life and maximize performance and accuracy. That again is missing over here on the Venu X1 as well. Okay, now that we've gone through a quick rundown of the specs and what's included on the Garmin Venu X1, I just want to talk about a few questions I had about this watch when I saw the announcement. The first thing I questioned was the comfort of this watch, because it has this giant 2-inch AMOLED display. It's got a rather large footprint if you compare it to something like the Forerunner 970 here, but it's insanely thin. So I was curious just to see what this would be like on my wrist. And the answer to that question is absolutely amazing. This watch is super comfortable, and I'm actually kind of shocked by the comfort level of this watch. Even though it's got this huge screen and rather large footprint, because it's so thin, when it's on your wrist, it sits really close to your skin and you kind of barely notice it's there. Particularly because of this band that they include called Comfort Fit. It's super comfortable, it's got a little bit of stretch to it, and it just makes the whole watch sort of disappear on your wrist. I've really enjoyed wearing it. And the same thing could kind of be said about something like the Apple Watches here. I've got the Apple Watch Series 10 and the Ultra 2, and as you can see, the footprint of the brand new Venu X1 is actually larger than these two Apple Watches. However, if we compare the Apple Watch Ultra 2, just look at how thin the Venu X1 is in comparison to the Ultra 2. It's kind of crazy. And the same goes for the Series 10. The Apple Watch Series 10 compared to the Venu X1 on the right, the Venu X1 is thinner, and I don't know, wearing these on my wrist, I actually prefer wearing the Garmin Venu X1 compared to the Apple Watch Series 10, which says a lot because the Series 10 is a very comfortable watch. Another thing about the Venu X1 is it just feels super premium, and I feel like this is something you won't really grasp until you pick one up and hold it in your hand, and that's probably a struggle that Garmin will face with the price tag of this watch, that a lot of people won't be able to go into a store and actually handle this thing, because when you feel it, it just has a real solid feel to it. The back is all metal, the buttons are metal. It feels really durable and well built, and it's something you can't really put into words on a web page or something like that. So if you can, I guess, go and try to pick one up in a store if you can find one. Another question I had about this watch was the built-in flashlight. So if I hold the lower left button here, you can see that the flashlight just turned on. And my question about this was the little opening on the front of this watch for the flashlight was really small. And if you compare that to something like the Forerunner 970 here, it's got a much larger opening for the flashlight. So I was worried that the new X1 would not be as bright as the Forerunner 970 or the Fenix 8. Trying to compare the brightness of these two flashlights is kind of difficult on camera, as you can see here. But what I can tell you, in a dark room, they kind of look the same. I would say the Forerunner 970 or the Fenix 8 is a little bit brighter, maybe like 10-20% brighter, but the flashlight on the Venu X1 is totally usable and still something that's very useful. Now let's talk about the display of the Venu X1, because another question I had about this watch was the display brightness. If you recall, when the Forerunner 970 and 570 launched, Garmin put a big emphasis on just how bright this display is. Even on their website, they say that the display of these watches is like 2 times brighter than the previous model. They didn't put any specs or excitement around the brightness of the AMOLED display on the Venu X1, but what I can say in my testing so far, the Venu X1 might actually be a little bit brighter than the Forerunner 970 that I've been testing. Even out in direct sunlight, I have no issue seeing the display on this watch. It's really quite good, and it is covered in a sapphire lens as well, so it'll prove to be just as durable as something like a Fenix 8 or the Forerunner 970 here. And for reference, I've got both these watches set at the same brightness right now, and as you can see, they kind of look the same on camera, and in person, again, The Venu X1 just has a really nice display. Another benefit to the display on the Venu X1 is just how much information you can see at a glance. As I scroll down, because it's a square form factor, you get full-length widgets all the way to the corners, where on a round watch, these would actually be cut off because of the aspect ratio. So you can see a lot more information as you scroll through your widgets, and it's just much more usable compared to a round watch. Now, a lot of people don't like square watches, and I get that, but if you don't mind a square watch, the layout here is just much more functional. And that square aspect ratio becomes even more useful when you're actually out in an activity. For example, when I took this watch out on a run, I actually set one of my data pages to be a map view with a bunch of pieces of information on it. And compared to the Forerunner 970 here that I also had with me, I had a map view that was almost as big as the Forerunner 970 screen, but alongside that map view, I also got additional information that I didn't get on the Forerunner 970. So just much more screen real estate to use and play with, and it's really enjoyable. The Garmin Venu X1, just like the Fenix 8 or the Forerunner 970, all feature a built-in speaker and microphone, and that's used for taking and making phone calls, of course, but on top of that, you can interact with your phone's assistant or offline voice commands directly on the watch, which is very useful. But another question I had about the speaker in particular was how loud it is, because this watch is just so darn thin. I couldn't imagine they could fit a giant speaker in it. And in the past, the Garmin Fenix 8 here got a relatively quiet speaker. As a quick test of speaker loudness, let's go ahead and play my podcast on both watches back to back so you can sort of make your own conclusions. First, I'm gonna hit play on the Forerunner 970 here, because there's a lot. We're gonna be talking about the new Amazfit Bip 6, which was just announced and released a couple of days ago. Now the Venu X1. Like official videos on the channel. It's kind of like a place where I ramble, and I do have some topics. I'm not just going to ramble over nothing. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new Garmin Forerunner 970. We will be talking about some updates coming to the Wahoo Kicker Run treadmill, that Venu X1. Garmin Vivo Active 6. Some of the new features that come along with that, because there's a lot. So as you can hear, hopefully, from my studio microphone here, the Venu X1 has enough loudness to be able to hear what's going on, but it's not quite as loud as the Forerunner 970. I would say it's somewhere in between the Garmin Fenix 8 and the 970 in terms of the volume. Now, keep in mind, I had both watches set to max volume. Okay, next up, I want to talk about GPS accuracy from the single run I've done with this watch so far. I figured it's worth taking a look at. Since this is not a multi-band device, I wanted to see how it stacked up. So what you're looking at here is a GPS track from earlier today. The Garmin Venu X1 is in red. The blue track is the Garmin Forerunner 970 in multi-band mode. And the orange track is actually my iPhone 16 Pro. So zooming in here, we're gonna pan along the route, and as you can see, all of the tracks actually look pretty good, including the iPhone, which is surprising. Scrolling a little further, we can see that they're still right on top of each other. Here, we can see that the red track, which is the Garmin Venu X1, does drift out a little bit as I enter this little trail here. It does only happen momentarily, so it's not a major deviation, but it is something. Scrolling along here, we can see the tracks all look pretty good. We're gonna come up to a corner, and still pretty tight. And nothing major here. Here again, we can see that there is a slight drift in the Venu X1, but it's only by a few feet, really nothing major to complain about. I should probably mention that this is an out and back run. I ran out 3 miles, turned around and went back 3 miles for about 10K. So all these tracks ideally should be stacked on top of each other since it is an out and back. And none of them really are, but they're all pretty darn close. To be honest, the Venu X1 is, it's got a couple of areas of drift, but this is a single run and I wouldn't really complain about it. It looks pretty darn close. Now, when it comes to overall distance recorded from the Garmin Forerunner 970, it recorded 6.02 miles, while the Venu X1 recorded 6.04 miles. So super close. Now let's talk about heart rate sensor accuracy from that Gen 5 heart rate sensor on the back of the Venu X1. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a graph between the Garmin Venu X1 in blue, the Garmin Forerunner 970 in purple. However, that Forerunner 970 was paired to the HRM 600 ECG sensor on my chest. And in red, we have the Amazfit Helio strap, what I'm wearing here. More on that soon. From a high level, you can see that all of these devices are doing a pretty good job. They're all falling in line with the ECG sensor pretty closely. There are a couple of spikes here and there, like the Amazfit spikes up here for a quick second, but goes back to standard after that. And then the Venu X1 misses this little dip entirely for a couple of seconds, but nothing major. As we move along, the trend line looks pretty similar and no major deviations. Again, a tiny little blip here from the Amazfit for a quick second. And moving towards the end of the run, I'd say they're all pretty darn close. To be honest, this is not really a surprise. I've tested the Gen 5 heart rate sensor several times on this channel on a number of different watches, and in my experience so far, it's been pretty good, and that's what we're seeing here. All right, so we've reached the end of this video, and now I want to talk about my initial impressions and what I think about this watch so far after a day of using it. My opinion about the Venu X1 has kind of changed. In my initial video about this watch, after reading the spec sheet, the price felt a little bit off, considering this watch is $799, and you could get a Forerunner 970 for $50 less for $749, or even the Garmin Fenix 8 for around the same price of the Venu X1 because this watch is currently on sale. However, since using this watch, I think I see the appeal here. The challenge for the Venu X1 is really that you don't appreciate it until you're holding it in your hand and have it on your wrist. The Venu X1 is just so different than every other Garmin out there. With its super thin, low profile form factor and giant display, there's just something unique about it that I can't really put into words. This is a premium sport watch with most of the bells and whistles found in the higher end options. And to be real, I don't think the Venu X1 is intended to compete with the Garmin Fenix 8. In reality, these are entirely different watches. The Fenix 8 is much heavier, much bulkier, much thicker, and it has a smaller display, where the Venu X1 is designed really as a Apple Watch Ultra competitor. And when we compare the Garmin Venu X1 compared to the Apple Watch Ultra 2 here, yeah, the Apple Watch does have a lot of benefits. It's got more smarts. You get cellular built in, you get connectivity that you don't get on the Venu X1. You get a ton of apps in the Apple ecosystem, but that's really on the smartwatch side of things. If you are looking for more of a sport watch, you want body battery, training readiness, training load, all those things that all tie in together, more advanced sleep metrics, that's where the Venu X1 really outperforms the Apple Watch Ultra 2 here, unless you're downloading third-party apps that can fill in the gaps. And on top of that, the Venu X1 also gets more robust mapping and navigation built in, completely offline, where you don't need an internet connection or your phone at all, and you get substantially longer battery life on the Venu X1, despite the fact that it's super thin compared to the Ultra 2 here. In either case, the Venu X1 is a super interesting device, and I'm happy to see Garmin made this. They really thought outside the box on this, and I know a lot of you might think they're trying to copy the Apple Watch, but this is really, it's different. But of course, that's just my early opinion of this device, and I'm gonna have to put it through its paces a lot more to come to a final conclusion in my in-depth review that'll be coming down the road. So if you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop into the comments down below and let me know what you think of the Venu X1 so far. Is this something you're interested in? What feature is drawing you to it? Is it the form factor? Is it something else about it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And as usual, when you're done commenting, make sure to drop into the description of this video down below, where I will have links where you can pick up your Venu X1 or any of the other watches I mentioned in this video. I'll also have links to my other social media profiles, my Strava, my Instagram, my podcast, my merch store. You can pick up a sweet shirt like this, and some other stuff. So check out the description below. I'm kind of running out of words here. All right, friends, that's the end of this video. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Feeling too trippy, get it cracking like a levy. I'ma show 'em all how to party if they let me.